All right. Well, Tom, you want to get into Claude Code? I guess not even necessarily just Claude Code, but specifically the new Subagents.
Yeah. So what is it? What is it? Take me through it. Show me. I'm
I
all yours.
think, I think this to me seems like possibly one of the biggest things to happen since MCP. But of course, that's from my perspective and the things that I'm interested in.
I
But
don't think it's just you, right? Like I've seen this explode on X, on a few WhatsApp groups I'm on. Everyone's been talking about it, and it seems like a big deal. This seems like this is a bit
yeah,
of a
I'm
step.
curious what you've seen because I haven't seen as much about it as I would have expected. I mean, there's people making videos on YouTube and tweets and stuff like that, but even like
At a
the models we were talking about earlier are really taking the spotlight, in my opinion. I just don't feel like I've heard a lot about this.
at a high level, from what I have seen and people describe, is that it's a better way to manage context and tasks. So almost as an abstraction layer for you as a coder engaging with something like a Claude Code, which is a remote agent, right? It's not like Cursor, what we're used to, like a background, what they call their background agent, where it doesn't let you in as much as some of those other kind of Copilot style coding agents, right? Which is great. But one of the challenges is that if you just say, build this feature for me, it doesn't necessarily execute that well in relative to your expectations. And this is a mechanism to better manage the context and the processes in an abstraction layer that has better outcomes. That's what people have been describing based on what I've seen. Is that true?
Okay.
Is that a good way to describe it? Like,
Yeah,
first up,
that is probably the number one thing is the context preservation. So when you create subagents, you're creating completely isolated instances of Claude, and with that, each one of them gets their own context window or like memory bank, right? So when we've talked about, there's so many different architectures. We've talked a lot about multi-agent architectures, and there's systems like LangGraph, for instance. A lot of the times you will share the same graph or thread. Some of the examples we've showed, you might have a mix of agents, and they all share memory. So it has its place either way. Like if you want to keep each agent completely isolated and not necessarily knowledgeable about everything along the whole layer, but you can also set it up that way if you'd like. But the context window preservation is the number one thing. And it just gives you so many options and flexibility. So I'll show some examples of creating these, but first, maybe just kind of walk through some of these finer points on the knowledge base.
yeah, that sounds perfect.
Okay, so with the context preservation, of course, it stores its information from your prompts, or that like every agent, every LLM gains an understanding by the information that you feed it. I think most people are familiar with ideas like system prompts and even Claude Desktop or Claude and OpenGPT or ChatGPT that are like the consumer grade products. You can customize things a little bit, right? With like your uh, system preferences, you can create custom system prompts, stuff like that. So this is what Claude Code really allows you to customize that. It's almost, I would say it's almost limitless, to be honest. And again, I think this is one of the things that right out of the gate, you could create some really complex systems and probably overdo it. I know that I have but also on purpose, just kind of exploring and trying to see. I usually jump to testing the limits right out of the gate. But, Tom, earlier this week, I mentioned to you that the more I play with this, it really kind of changes the way that I think about multi-agent systems and architecture, or not necessarily changes, but some of these capabilities that we're now getting to, they're ideas that I've thought about a lot, but the way that they're being presented to us are different than what I would expected. And this is a perfect example. Also, one thing that I think is kind of funny about this is the product is called Claude Code, but it almost it almost seems like to me it could be called Claude no code because while you do use it primarily in a command line interface, even creating these agents has become a task that you can do by just prompting. So, and we'll see it when I do the demo, but you don't have to write code whatsoever to create subagents. It's all through prompting. So, and then of course the reusability is key. So that's like you can create specialized agents at such a granular level or high level as well. But like if I have a folder on my computer that has some type of specialized information, I always repeat the same process. I can create a team of subagents that I can just reuse all the time. And then the permissions, there's actually a lot that comes with like enterprise using these within businesses. Now, these are still development tools. I don't think unless you're like really cutting edge company, you're probably not going to be handing Claude Code to all your end users. But you can see that they're thinking about and building into the system, like how will this actually be usable within the enterprise? And I think they've done a really nice job with this. I think one of the most important concepts to understand here when we're talking about subagents is the different levels of memory. So if you look at the documentation, you'll see we have project subagents, and then it shows you the folder. You see the dot there, .claude. That is just the local path on your computer. And then we have the system path, and that's at the user level. So what that allows you to do is create your preferences and customization like for your entire computer. Or maybe I just want this special instruction and these preferences at the folder level. So that is like that right there gives you so many different options and ways that you can design your own custom system. And then even beyond that, that's like for me as an individual, somewhere in here they have a note about more like a team setting. Sorry, I had this bookmarked.
I know that they have a when you're using Claude Code, they do have the ability to share configuration files and Claude Code configurations between developers within the same team. So it might just be an extension of that, right? Because they do have like configuration around, code conventions or, packages or any of those like dev environment kind of setup stuff. So you can share that around. So that would make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Here's an example of what I was talking about. I guess this is more specific to MCP, but you can see here that you can create a .mcp.json file, and then that would allow you to have like a shared workspace that you're collaborating with people. And for that project and that team, you customize those specific MCP tools and settings for that project.
Just going back to just at a high level, like very, very simply defining like these agents and subagents. So you have the high level, which I guess we could call like the supervisor, which effectively is the way you interact with it via the terminal, right? And then, that example there is like you save it in the documentation, and it says like, for example, use, just above that, I believe it's like save and use, on the section, the quick start. The example is like, use the code reviewer subagent to check my recent changes, is an example of like invoking these different agents. But like you said, the definition of one of these subagents is a markdown file, right? That's all it is, or is it more than that?
No, that's it. It's a markdown file, and it's really interesting to me that we've talked about like A2A protocol. They have agent cards, right? And some of these JSON-based abstractions of like MCP is going that direction as well, where you might like an MCP server card that's a JSON object, and it defines like all the packages, what those tools do, etc. So this is actually very similar, and while they are defined as markdown files, it's like exactly the same thing. here's where you can see an example of the markdown file format. So that's all it is.
And it's a
It's
description.
a name of your,
Yeah.
it's the name, description, and then what tools it has access to. And this will probably change by the time we, who knows, it could be by the time we publish this podcast. But I think the MCP tools in combination with the subagents is, I think it's unique because OpenAI, you mentioned agent, OpenAI agent. Well, they have the agent using tools in the background, but it's, as far as I know, you can't use it in combination with your MCP tools that you've added. So like if you've created custom connectors or you're using the built-in ones that they released, I don't believe you can use those in combination with agent, where Claude subagents, you can. So that adds just another dimension, I guess, to the level of customization, is just being able to define tools. And like you said, you have your primary generalist. You could think of it as like supervisor Claude, and you wouldn't even have to give that the generalist access to any MCP tools. You could even define your specialist subagents to have access to very specific tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then interestingly, it says like in the tool section definitions, you can just have them all inherit all of the tools from the top level agent as well. So if you don't list any, it will just cascade, kind of like a style sheet. It'll cascade all of the tool availability down through the subagents if required, which is also really cool. The thing that I thought was interesting in this is if you scroll down to the explicit invocation section, just above that it says, basically it's kind of giving examples, and then there's some example subagents in the documentation. They've got a code reviewer, so you can see like how they're actually specified: a code reviewer, a debugger, and a data scientist kind of subagent examples. To encourage Claude to be more proactive in its subagent use, you can use the terms proactively or must be used in the description field. So when you're defining your agent, for example, in the code reviewer, in the description field in here, it says, this is an expert. The description, the code reviewer, expert code reviewer specialist, proactively reviews code for quality, security, and maintainability. And there must be some sort of self-reference within Claude Code that says, all right, well, whenever those kinds of things are mentioned, this is my dependent subagent that is kind of prioritized, right?
Yep. And actually,
it'd be
there's
great to see
another,
like the system prompt underneath that and how they've actually figured that out, because they must have updated their system prompt to execute on this for this kind of architecture, right?
Yeah. And I think the settings, that's something that I hadn't mentioned yet, but you can also customize. There are settings files. Where does it describe? And that gives you another dimension as well. And I think what you're saying there would be more defined in the settings.
It's interesting how they describe the subagents in the Markdown as well. It's a very consistent structure in the Markdown files. It's like basically it's the metadata, so the name, the description which we were just discussing, and the tools like bash, read, write, basic ones, and then other things. But the actual model, agent card, if we can call it that, in this Markdown, is very technical in its language. It says when invoked, it does X, Y, Z. Its key practices are writing optimized SQL queries for this data scientist. And then for each task, there's also a descriptive kind of execution framework. It's like for each analysis, explain the query approach, et cetera, et cetera. So they must be a best practice kind of structure. I don't know if you played around with the ones that you did in your demo, like if like what's more or less effective. Like, did you follow this pattern, or did you just go whatever, like just stream of consciousness? Or did you say, hey, Claude, generate me all of these agents?
Yeah, I've all of the above. And I don't know the best answer. Like I guess they call it meta prompting. Using AI to generate your prompts is not always the answer, but when you're doing quick little things like this, or maybe just like some one-off stuff, it's totally fine. And in fact, the way that this works, that's built in. So let me just open a terminal and I'll show you.
Yeah. while you're doing that, it must I think it must get off the rails pretty fast because they've got the best practices and all the stuff that we've already described, like being very specific and writing detailed prompts, etc. But the last thing they say is version control these, check project subagents into version control. So there must be like pretty significant like wild variants of things that occur, so you can roll back specific updates to say subagent prompts pretty rapidly, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
It also says like don't overload them. So don't overload them with tools, like limit their tool access. So there must be some sort of like tool confusion component, which is not uncommon, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
cool. You can also
the number
chain
of
them as
the
well.
number of
Actually.
tools you load in, that also affects your context window consumption as well, because it takes, like, if you have an MCP server with like 30 tools, it has to pull in and like really long descriptions. Of course, that's great for making it most effective, but it also consumes your context window as well.
I think
A
it's
lot of things
interesting.
to think about.
Yeah, you can also, context management is always a massive problem, right? So that's a good point. The other thing in the docs before you start kicking off into this is chaining subagents. So you can just literally give your supervisor a chain of prompt, which is like first use the code analyzer subagent to find performance issues, then use the optimizer subagent to fix those problems that the subagent found, which again is sort of just like a more effective way to get Claude to execute its flow when you can't like really see what's going on under the hood. I don't know. Would all of this go away if they just like showed us the reasoning chain and let us sort of stop it and interrupt? Kind of like with the ChatGPT agent. Actually, that's one of the best features I've seen in that. Is just you can interrupt it midstream and say no, you're going off the rails. Like you can quote unquote supervise more effectively, which is something that frustrates the hell out of me with Claude Code, because all I see is just like, all right, I've burnt through 1 million tokens and I've been thinking for 40 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but where's your head at? Kind of thing.
I've thought that with Claude Code, it's been much better as far as being able to interrupt, but you don't have that.
Well, maybe unless I'm not using it correctly, which could be it's not unlikely. But if I have a timeout, or I'm not exactly sure what it's doing, sometimes I'll just like, because I use it over the top of Cursor sometimes. So I'll be working in the same project folder. I'll initialize Claude Code, and then I'll also be using the asking feature to like go in and evaluate the code that it's creating within the project. So I kind of look at it as it's generating the files, and then have the Cursor agent looking at it as well, not executing in agent mode, but just like in evaluation kind of ask mode. So I do that to try and peer under the hood. But if it's just thinking about stuff, or if it's going to look at websites, or if it's doing all the other stuff under the hood, then I didn't think you could actually see that reasoning chain, right? In Claude Code, you can't actually see that.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Claude Code is it's kind of like we said earlier with Google. It's the engine, so there are so many opportunities for building rich applications on top of this. But you're right, there's a lot of there's a lot to be desired in terms of like observability. Maybe not on the backside. You can actually, I'll talk about that too. You can configure observability just like Langsmith and some of the other things we've talked about. But from a user standpoint, while you're using it, yeah, I've spent a lot of time kind of like looking at these. They pretty much looks like logs and trying to figure out what is it doing, where's it at.
Yeah, what did it do? What
But I
decisions
think
did it make, and
that's going to
why?
be more application level stuff.
Yeah. All right, take me through. I'll stop interrupting you now. I'm keen to see it in action.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, so I brought this up because I was going to show how Claude Code Subagent has built-in capability to essentially do meta prompting, which is using AI to generate your agent card or what you want to accomplish. So, Tom, how many times have you done this where you open the terminal and you start typing your thing, and then you're like, oh shit, I need to open Claude first. I've been doing
Yeah,
that
like
actually quite a bit.
init, and it's like init what? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so key concepts with Claude Code is these slash commands. That's basically like your shortcut to all the configurations and settings, even MCP tools. But you can do a lot actually with some of these. But we will focus on agents. So all I did, let me just do it one more time. All I did was typed in Claude, and it launches Claude Code. So then I'd type / agents. And as you can see here, I already have quite a few subagents that I've created. These are just tests. But right here, you have an option to create a new agent. And then we were just talking about the scoping. So you can set this up to be available at the project level or your user level. So I guess they call it here personal. We'll select project. So that means the folder that I have open here, it's called build Claude Code pod prep. So this agent will only be available in that folder. Now, what do we need our agent to do, Tom? I can just steal another one. Like, let's just research. So let's do.
How about you do a hugging face researcher that looks for trending models, data sets, and projects on Hugging Face in the last week. So expert researcher, there's an expert on Hugging Face research, models, and training projects past week.
Okay, well, it doesn't really matter how, I mean, it does a little bit, but I don't have to spend a ton of time constructing this initial prompt, because when I hit enter, it's going to basically just do an improved version of that, right? So I hit enter, and now Claude, the primary instance of Claude, the generalist, is thinking about it, and it's going to create a much better version of that markdown file or that agent card that I described.
All for the lowly token count of 5 trillion tokens. I go off into a box and think for a while, like Claude usually does. All right, here we go.
Okay,
so what do we got?
Next, after I get past this, it will show the system card. But you see, it basically prompts you and says, "Do you want to give the subagent access to all your tools, or do you want to customize it a little bit?" So if I go to custom options, I can see the entire list of these are primarily MCP servers that I have attached. But you'll notice here at the top, these are built-in tools, so you can select those as well. So you can get as granular as you would like. For now, I'll just select all, and next it's going to ask me the model to select. Should I just hit enter? You can also customize the colors, which seems kind of novel, but it's actually pretty useful if you want to create like mappings to different types of categories, or the red agents have these types of tools, the blue agents don't have any tools, whatever. I mean,
yeah, awesome. If you go to the bottom there, so that Hugging Face Trend Analyst one, can you open it now and you can view the agent, right? Okay, or edit the agent.
Yep.
And then you can define, all right, cool. This is, yeah.
So you can see my prompt or my requirements were like nowhere, sorry, lost. My requirements were nowhere near this level.
Right. I can see why this is powerful, because then you can just meta prompt it out, and then you could quickly build out all of your specific components. So you could do this. I wonder if you can go one level up and just say, could you go one level up and say, hey, Claude, I'm working on a website project for an e-commerce company in the clothing business. Create me all of the subagents I'll need for this entire project. Or is it one by one? Right. Yeah. So you can get pretty fast. Yeah, that's great.
What I've noticed, I'll have to experiment more. But if I hadn't created any subagents, it wouldn't, like, I haven't been successful in just prompting Claude and saying create these subagents. But if there are some that already exist, I have been able to do that, where I don't even have to use that / command. It basically just looks at the markdown, makes it like a template, and then you can just on the fly create subagents. Which, exactly, Tom, you're starting to like. Those are the types of things where I'm sitting here going, yeah, this is revolutionary. I mean,
and if you've got like a team that you're working with all on Claude Code, you have your team, you'd have a process that you have, and then you'd share all of that with everyone. And then specific tasks, I'm assuming you would create user level subagents, right? Or say you're going between different languages or like different elements of your stack or products, whatever it is you're building. Yeah, right.
Right. And I don't know. I think the system is actually designed specifically not to do this. Trying to remember now where I created those. So I was curious. Hopefully it's this folder. And I was thinking about basically like trees of agents and subagents, and thinking about like the top level supervisor at the user level. Well, by default, you're specifically designing the project level agents so that they're isolated and you can't access them from another level. However, I think you can. So I was experimenting with this concept of, I created a task decomposition agent at the user level. With the idea being, it can be like really, really good at understanding how to break down tasks and then what tools and agents are available in my system, and then being able to dynamically create either new combinations of subagents that I haven't defined before, or creating new subagents using the same ideas that I already have within some of those. So let's see if this works. I'll try the task decomposition agent. Okay, so
use the task decomposition agent to create a new team of subagents. Yeah, okay. And you're who are expert researchers, right? In academic research synthesizer.md file. Is that sort of the reference point that you've got?
What was that? Where's the...
So you're creating this, but then it says underneath that it's got like in, and see that blue text that says in academic-research synthesizer.md. Is that like editing a specific file?
No. That...
Or it references something if you've got that reference point.
Yeah, maybe I need to get out of... Let me just...
Right, because it's referencing that project.
I don't know. With VS Code, and that's the other thing too, is it can attach to your IDE, and I don't know.
You just want to copy that and maybe copy it and restart it. Sorry, I won't interrupt you again.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, because like terminal, like it's like we're back to, MS DOS and running your entire computer from the terminal, and just like it's great in some ways, but it's not great in others, and like referencing context and all these things, and you try and add little like additions to it. I know there's a project that's emerging, like as you write that up, there's a project that I found this week that's basically just trying to make a beautiful kind of terminal experience. I'll pull it up and add it to the show notes. Basically, it's like trying to solve that problem. But I'm like, guys, that problem was solved by Windows back in the day. We went from DOS and we went to Windows because of that reason.
I know. And that's what's interesting about this, is it's taken the world by storm. And on the surface, it feels like almost going backwards. But then you take into consideration, like what I just said about how I think just as fitting of a name for this could be Claude No Code, even though it's run from a terminal. So I didn't see this coming whatsoever, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Yeah.
So, okay. So here you see the blue subagent. So I had already created this task decomposition expert at my user level, and I coded it blue. And that's actually really useful, especially this is kind of messy output to be able to see things, where it's at, who's doing what. And this might take a minute, because the other thing that I did was I created a script that scans my entire machine for the subagent.markdown files, and then inventoried those in a SQLite database. And it's using embeddings to like semantic search to figure out what are the best existing subagents that I have.
That's really cool.
Combine them. So this is like a hack together. It's kind of like a hack that I created, but it will absolutely, like, this is what will happen, whether it's at the application level or a feature update of some sort. It provides, if you're a creative person and just understand how this works, this gives you so much.
That's really cool, man.
Here,
I saw that and I was like, all right, well, so it's a firing up like a chroma kind of thing, like locally. And it's basically you're giving the task decomposition, you're giving Claude like a mini RAG kind of experience over the top of previously created agents, so that the output will effectively be quote unquote better, more accurate, or faster. I assume. Are there online
Oh,
services for something like that? That'd be a cool idea. Like create something like that. Maybe we should put it in the vault. That'd be sick. And
yeah, I
just
was
like,
thinking about it. That's why I have the project folder I'm working out. I was thinking about maybe creating something we can put out there. I'll
yeah,
show you the
yeah. While that's
database real
going, yeah,
quick.
spin it up. I want to see it. That's rad. And then the output basically is like it defines how many of those subagents it wants to build within that AI research team that you created, right? So there's no constraint on the number. What did you say? And I only want 10, I only want 12, or is it just like you just Claude just decides?
I didn't put anything specific, but what I've seen some notes that say you do want to limit it to maybe like 5 or so. And I've also run into quite a few things where I probably created too many and then it runs for like half an hour and you look at it and you're like, I didn't need to do that. Like, you know, um,
Yeah, and I
I don't
wonder
know if
about
you,
like
can you
the
see
way to
this okay?
think about. Yeah, I can. So like this is like the SQL database. So this is pulling in all of the different agent files that you've created, right, and indexing them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep. So there's, I guess, 93. I didn't think I had that
93.
many, but so that's, according to this, I have 93 specialized subagents on my machine. Over here on the right, you can see, there's like metadata. What tools does it have? It has the full definition of the subagents. The way that I set this up with the embeddings, it's using a semantic similarity and the task decomposition logic, and then figuring out what do we already have that we can use. We need to create new subagents, and yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think that's really how it's supposed to work, but it's basically very quickly allowed me to apply some of the ideas that I've actually like. This is not a new idea that I came up with this week, right? This
yeah,
is
yeah.
something I've actually done quite a bit with, just using different methods. But this allows you to basically do that like instant.
Yeah, and we spoke about this last week, right? And that's a great example of like the acceleration effect you get using some of these simple tools that I think kind of we forget about. That's a great example. So thanks for showing it. Just back on that question around like the kinds of agents and the number. It's interesting. I'd be interested to see and dig into like what people are seeing. In the documentation, they basically, it seems like they're defining them as when there is a sequence of work or when there's a specialization. But we can't anthropomorphize these things, right? It's basically just when you need the context to be narrow band for a better outcome. Kind of like that medical agent thing we talked through, that example where there's a specific directive request into one sub-agent within the kind of, in that example that was a couple of episodes ago, it was types of input on a medical diagnosis where they specifically defined sub-agents to be critical, to be focused on cost, to be focused on, patient experience, whatever it is. So it's like it'd be interesting to see how this emerges around how to think about the sub-agent definition scope, how narrow, how broad, and the efficacy of those things and how it applies to, obviously this is coding mostly, right? So you could pretty much think like obviously a QA engineer is very different to like a web dev to like a full stack or like whatever, like, SQL, like data analyst, all of those things, like they're well defined. But then how do you define it in terms of like outcomes as well? Like I'm looking for this specific outcome. For example, it's like a code analyzer is an outcome on performance issues in the documentation example. Just focus on that, then pass it to the sub agent, which is an optimizer, and they're not roles or people outcomes defined. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if you got any
I think
comments
in
on that.
terms of like workflows, inputs, outputs, composed workflows, and yeah. So
Oh,
now I'm sitting here
so,
like, well, shit. Now I actually have to sit down and map like every single type of task that I do, like
well, let's
because
talk through this example. This is interesting
and
because
that's the
this raises
thing
a few
is
questions. Yeah,
the meta
this raises a
prompting,
few.
the meta prompting and stuff is cool, but you also really to be most effective, you still have to apply a lot of like thought and to some levels design. If you're going to create a complex system of tons of subagents, you need to really spend time. The fine details of those prompts will be more important the more you scale your system. Tom, what were you saying?
Well, can you just talk us through? So we had this task decomposition kind of meta generation of subagents within Claude, and the request was academic trends. Basically, created a team of expert researcher subagents focused on the latest academic trends and coding projects in AI. Right? It spent 27,000 tokens and 2.5 minutes doing that. What are the agents that came out? Because that'll be interesting.
Yeah. We have a academic papers specialist, a code implementation expert, a trends analyst, and a technical integration specialist. So in that process of defining like what type of subagents, it also defined the tools that it has access to, a lot of those customizations we talked about earlier. So let's, just to demonstrate this, let's kick off. I was going to feed it the hierarchical reasoning model paper, but I think we want to have it do more broad research. So maybe just like topic is hierarchical reasoning models. We'll just leave it at that. See what it comes back with.
And yeah, that's great. So while this is kicking off, one question I have. All right, here we go. Yeah, let's do them using this team that I've created. Oh no, what's it doing?
Sorry, I thought it was going through the whole database search again. No, it wasn't.
No, it's not.
We're on track.
What I'm really interested in is referencing. So when we were talking through the documentation, it said in the description you can be prescriptive and you can say the specific language in the description, like the meta description, or I would call, of the card, where it says like if you use phrases like use proactively for, and then it describes the task. What I'm interested to see is like in the definition of those 4 agents: academic paper specialist, code implementation, trend analyst, and a technical integration. Did Claude predefine the prioritization or use of those agents in the description card as well? Maybe we can pull that up while this is thinking and transmuting. And see, this is the bit that annoys me about Claude Code. I'm like, I want to see what it's doing. I want to see the reasoning. Trace it. I want to see what it's saying.
I know. Anyway. You can hit, I think, Control R, and you can see more details.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. That. All right. I didn't know that key. What's that? What is it? Control R.
Control R.
And then, all right. So there. Yeah. Okay. So that was just me being a noob.
I don't know that this is actually working the way that we were anticipating. I was in the wrong folder. See, that's the thing is, it's there's no system here for managing. Like you create a bunch of sub agents and hooks and all this stuff. You kind of at this point have to create your own management.
Well, that's interesting because yeah, you're in the wrong folder. In the documentation, it says you can be prescriptive and say use this agent, and you can invoke them specifically. Is that all you just had to do, or you're in the wrong spot? You know, use the team of agents to do X.
Yeah, sorry, I'm lost on that.
Maybe hide your reasoning traces.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't know that was working how I planned. That was kind of hacked together, but you get the idea. Like what you understand what I was explaining there, right? Like the possibilities.
It did, yeah.
Because unless I'm just in the wrong, I don't know, I might be in the wrong folder, but I don't see where it actually created the agent cards. Seems like what it did is kind of stored those concepts in memory and then just repeated those patterns. And it's funny.
Or, yeah, if it's it wouldn't it store them in the system like .claude folder, so you'd have to go and find them. But yeah, it definitely makes sense. I'm keen to try out a few more of them and also see some of the like the swarm things that you've got moving. Like you've got heaps of them, right?
Yeah. Yep. Quite a few. Shit. Yeah. Let me jump back over to the project folder and I'll just put in that same prompt unless you have a different.
No, go for it. Check it in.
Am I sharing the VS Code? No. All right, Tom. So I'm just going to jump back over to this project folder and then issue the same prompt and see if it handles it any differently. The reason is I was demonstrating that hierarchical task decomposition concept, and I don't know that it was actually working the way that we'd expect. Oh, fuck. Forgot to remove that. Okay, this time I'm going to skip the task decomposition agent. That's a little bit of a hacky work in progress. We'll see if it actually creates the agent. So you can see here that it lists the agents available in this folder. So the agents actually by default, they get created in the agents folder under this .claude. I, for organizational purposes, started putting them in specific folders, and that still works. Like it looks at the agent folder and then looks at the entire tree.
Do you know if, just on that, can subagents have subagents?
Now you're thinking, Tom. The
Is this Inception? So
yeah,
like,
that's a good. I think you can because there's I skipped over it, but at the project level, you can also define memory and settings at the local project level, which would be more like even more granular. So with the way that this works in general, I would think you can, but I haven't tried that yet.
Claude Code is a hackable toolkit, right? Like it's an open source thing that you can hack and update if you got the skills. I wonder if people are just taking this and launching products, like sub-agent products. Because I saw recently, it's not released yet, but Stripe is working on a billing feature, which is just inference percentage uplift. So you can just say, hey, I'm just going to charge you percentage uplift on your inference to use my interface, my wrapper over the top of anything. So you could basically just say, all right, I've got all my sub agents and my, I've optimized it really well for these specific tasks. Launch it with a simple vibe coded UI and just have these things executed. There must be people doing that in the vibing world.
I think so. You're absolutely right. Tom, it wouldn't be the Build podcast without an MCP plug, right? So if we have time, I'll show you that. I'll get to I had to,
Yeah, I love it.
It's like in my blood now. Yeah. So what do we have here? We have the proposed agent card essentially. So define the academic researcher, all the tools, examples, system prompt, output format. I mean, it's basically everything that you take into consideration when you design your agents. I mean,
so in the output,
what's that?
so you can actually specify like the JSON schema output in the agent MD file as well. That's cool, as it has here.
Again, another kind of like, I don't know that it was designed necessarily for this, but this also allows you to create agents that can like create and run scripts as well. So that adds even more power. And talked a lot about the context window preservation. Well, there are a lot of things you could do where maybe your subagent would write a script to do something rather than process it with an LLM. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna hit yellow mode here so we can get through this. But you understand, like this is pretty much the high level of Claude Code, subagents, how it works. But there are quite a few customizations and settings and different ways you can set this up. But we're going to end up with a team of 4. Oh, interesting. I hadn't seen this happen yet. You know how I was saying that I created these folders and categorized them by teams? It looks like in this instance, it picked that up and it created this one in a research folder.
Yeah, so it's following your folder convention. It's probably as a result of being trained on lots and lots of Next.js, like tree structures. It's interesting in the description, the meta description at the top there, it says use this agent. So it is programmed to meta define, like the meta prompting is using the conventions that they define in the documentation, right? Use this agent when, or, invoke when you need to.
Yep, exactly. I don't know where it's at. I created a subagent to create subagents that has like the documentation already predefined and stuff like that.
So it's defined. I'd love to
While
see.
we're waiting on that, we haven't really touched on the memory. Like I've mentioned memory a bunch of times without specifically talking about these Claude.md files.
Yeah, let's go through that.
Yeah, it's essentially like the same. I mean, for any developers out there, it's the same as like your agents.md. And this is not a Claude Code specific concept. It's just kind of an extension on where things are going or how people have been thinking about these things. So you see, I actually have 2. I have a local, which I guess that doesn't help me illustrate because it's at the root level anyways. But this is everything, and it's so nice because you can easily view it and modify it yourself.
And this is basically the file when you initialize a Claude instance, right? It will
Yeah,
scrub through your pack, through whatever it can see in the project folder, and then it will create its Claude MD file.
that's exactly right. Thanks for keeping me on track, Tom, because
I've started when I've been using Claude
mentioned that.
Code. I've actually, because I found that it
Yeah,
wasn't.
when you launch Claude Code, the very first thing that you should do is type /init, initialize, and that will create your claude.md file. I believe your settings as well.
Yeah.
And then, well, this is an existing code base, and I already have the Claude file, but I've still been using init, and it'll just update it.
It does update it, yeah. And I've found like if you're building a new project, just initialize, like clone the repo, then do the init, like because otherwise it just fills it up with like I'm just Claude custom, and then it's just a waste of tokens. But what I've found is it's pretty concise, so it won't log a range of things that I was hoping to keep in there. So when I've been using it, I've started asking Claude to say, all right, create the planner versus the executor mode, so you can switch it over, and if you like alt shift tab into planning mode, right? I say, all right, well, here's my task, plan it out. It might be like plan it out and create your subagents in this case. And then I'll say, right, commit that to a plan.md file and then update your Claude MD to reference the plan. Although I guess now I could just have a subagent always executing this workflow in the background, which is another kind of use case of this, right? And then I've also started putting in a log file as well. So to say, all right, well, commit everything to the log of the changes and track changes that have been made, so that I'm trying to basically make sure it doesn't get into that recursion loop where it tries to solve something, it fails, and I tell it it's failed. And then I'm trying to use the log as a self-referential point to make it understand the failures that it's had in the same session, because I tried to do that into the MD file and it just refuses to make it really verbose. It refuses to put lots of stuff in there.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Honestly, I think what you're touching on is going to get to the point of like self-improvement. I think you can already do that with this system if you design it properly.
Yeah. And so they didn't ship
so-
it. They didn't ship this update with a set of standard ones, right? They just put the documentation out. They didn't say, and you can like download just some example ones to get you started. Well, they did, like agent files.
No, they just provided those examples in the documentation. But when you launch Claude, it doesn't give you any option for like create a demo or create sample agents. Okay, so we're almost we're getting there. And this is definitely not the type of it's not the system for like just doing quick things. It's actually can take a really long time. Whether you're talking about creating agents or doing a research project or coding project or whatever. So success.
And so it's created the same. Well, actually, no, these are different ones from the last like test run we did. So there's an academic trends researcher specializing in the academic trends, blah, blah, blah. An AI coding projects researcher looking at GitHub, frameworks, real world AI applications. And what were the other two? There's the orchestrator. Then there's a paper analyzer subagent. So trying to get, I'm assuming, the key components out of that. So offloading that task. And then there's a Hugging Face trends analyzer as well.
Yep. Now, thinking through this, like right before we were talking about the task decomposition thing that I set up, and in that case, it probably would have said, well, we already have some agents here that might work for this. But in this instance, it just created all the new ones, right? So now that we actually created the subagents with that method, if we say
so just just before you do that, Cameron, if you go back to the orchestrator, you'll see that it actually specified queries that it will respond to. If you go accepted inputs in the team section further down, that's fascinating. It says accepted inputs are the request, which is the research query in the context. You can scope it, say comprehensive trends, implementation papers, and then the time frame, recent or historical, and then the depth as well. That's really cool. And I wonder how that, its execution of that within the sub agent definitions changes their behavior based on those keywords. Man, I can see why you've lost a week playing with this tool.
Yeah, I don't think it's a loss at all. But yeah, it did get me a little sidetracked. But I think it's very important, and it's changed the way that I'm developing some of the ideas that I have. Um, so yeah, let's actually run through this basic example, and I'll show you some other quick things. So we're going to use the research subagent team to create a paper on
Hierarchical reasoning models.
hierarchical reasoning models.
This will be really interesting because I tried to do this as a human to try and find more information about that concept, any other research papers that they reference, any independent implementations of it.
You know what's funny is I actually took that HRM paper and I created a team of subagents that kind of try to like simulate. They're totally different things, but tried to like simulate that concept. And actually, I don't know, maybe it's not so different because what I was explaining about like all these different scopes at the project level, user level, maybe there is some bleed over there with the whole concept of HRM. So it's using the AI, the research orchestrator, throwing some errors down here. What are these? I tried to call it self, maybe? I don't know. Took a second to get back on track. Let me open the details, see if that helps. Nope.
Yeah, that's weird. So it said it threw an error saying I couldn't find the AI orchestrator, but then it did. Oh, right. It said I need to use the general purpose agent to access the custom AI orchestrator agent first, and then it went and found it, and now it's executing across those subagents.
Still don't know that this is working the way that I expect. Web search task. See the task, that's a task agent, which is like generalist.
Open up
So I
the
believe right now, I don't
reasoning.
think it's even using.
So open up the logs so we can see.
That's what I was trying to do, but it wasn't.
It's not giving
Didn't
us the
show
detail.
the detail. Yeah. But what we should see happen here. Okay, now it's going to invoke the coding projects researcher. So we should see a color coded model. See, it references these. It says invoke AI research paper analyzer, but it doesn't show the steps like what I would expect. It's where I don't know. I need to set up some like tracing or something to be able to see more details. Here, let's try. While this is going, Tom, the other day you were talking about you trying to use scripts to edit videos, right?
Yes. So like an orchestration layer over the top of specific video LLM video model calls to orchestrate a video generation. I have made a fair bit of progress on that, specific to a couple of applications I've been thinking about in my day job. But this using this sub-agent orchestration kind of flow would be amazing for that.
Let's just abandon this one because I do want everybody to be able to see how this actually works. But I could see, and I guess I've kind of run into it even before today, where I'm like, cool, I have my agent team set up, and then I go back and look, and it almost like tricks you into thinking that it used that agent team, but it didn't. Okay, yeah, it's hard using one monitor, man. When you're so used to multiple monitors, and then the way I have this set up, trying to share, and okay.
And there is a
VS
YouTube
Code
thumbnail if I've ever seen one.
They're kind of stoned, man. What were you doing that day?
That's just my general face. Look at that.
Okay, so let's try this. I just imported this video. It's a little clip from one of our podcast episodes, and let's see if we can get an agent team to what do we want to do, like transcribe, try to cut it together. I guess if you've been messing with these, you probably know some good prompts that will actually do this.
So the workflow that seems to work for, at least for, say, in this context, that's a podcast excerpt, is a flow of extracting the raw description, right? Or raw transcript and data. Then there's an analysis of the most interesting and most shareable or most useful components. Then there's the step of defining the timestamps and a description and the metadata of that. Then there's an extraction step where you'd use, say, FFmpeg or something like that to actually get the component, right? If we're talking about just getting that component of the video out as a shareable snippet. Then there's a step of basically optimizing it where you can use FFmpeg to overlay the captions, for example, or change the aspect ratio to be shareable across multiple social media platforms. So that could either be multiple subagents or it could be one subagent that knows how to optimize it and change the aspect ratio using FFmpeg for TikTok or for Instagram or for YouTube Shorts, for example. And whether they should be subagents or one big monolithic agent that has the context of everything and just splits it up. I don't really know, but that's sort of the workflow. And then there's the distribution part, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could create a big team actually for everything, but
in this instance, it's a workflow, right? Like this isn't self-referential. It's like first use this agent, then use this agent, then use that agent. Like it's definitely a flow, which is more like what's in the documentation that they describe. So it potentially could be more complicated, but is a good example of what they intend for some of these agents.
I'll just show you, like, in some of these tests, this is how I've been creating some of them. I feed it the documentation. Say, read this documentation so you understand what subagents are. Here's generally what I need. And Tom, I didn't even capture like percentage of what you just described.
Got it. It's okay.
But it will. And here, I hope it doesn't. I don't want it to actually create the agents. What I'm doing here is hopefully I'll just get a set of like those agent cards.
Yeah.
And then I'll just paste it in. I'll go through that /agents process, and then I'll just paste in what it came out, and then it'll enhance it even further. Okay. So it's reading the documentation still. Let me design a comprehensive podcast production and editing team using subagents. Oh yeah, to-dos. We haven't really hit on that, but that's another, I guess you could think of it. It's like a component of memory, but as it goes through this, it defines a to-do list, and then it updates its progress along the way. And that's actually really useful for us while we're using it. You can see like through this whole mess of stuff that's hard to read through. Well, at least I can see pretty clearly where we're at. It just created didn't create it, designed the card. Yeah. So it's creating a podcast transcriber agent, or a content analyst, a timestamp extractor, highlight clipper, metadata extractor, quality controller agent, and example workflow. That's not an agent, but it's going to define a workflow that we can initiate.
That's so cool. Whoever makes FFmpeg is like, they are my heroes. They are my absolute heroes.
And I think it's funny how I just recently heard this term meta prompting, and maybe there's components of it or like different levels that I just don't understand. But I'm just kind of sitting there scratching my head, like, is this a new concept to use AI to create your prompts? Because I don't know. I feel like that's kind of day one, at least for me. Like I've always done that.
I think I think power users have always done that, right? It seems, and also specific applications. So where it really matters, where there's not a lot of chat turns. So if you're using something where there's no chat return, I think people went into meta prompting pretty fast. Whereas if you're using ChatGPT every day or one of those tools, effectively the tool meta prompts you by function of its interaction with you. It'll come up and say, all right, this is what you want. Then it makes an error and you're like, oh, actually, I thought about this. And then I even, like, one of the things I did early days with ChatGPT is I always prompted it to ask me follow-up questions in a certain format that then prompt my responses. That's another reason why, like I was saying earlier in the show about Google just absolutely dominating, creating so much rich advertising inventory through AI mode, is that they are creating like the best kind of meta prompt kind of experience where you are engaging with it, getting more value, and then they'll be able to inject all of their inventory into those streams so easily in a way that's just really unpleasant when you're just going and searching. Like, it's so much better. It's such a better experience.
Yeah, man. I don't know. There's like so much bleed over in concepts, and that's where sometimes I have a hard time. I'm like, yeah, I do that, but I didn't really think of it exactly in that way. I don't know. It's all AI.
I'm just going through this
Yeah.
So the Claude Code.
So you see
Yeah.
it's creating, I just did this for simplicity so we can actually read these, but I had it save the cards, I guess what I'm calling cards at least, as markdown files. And then I'm just going to simply use the slash agents wizard and paste this prompt for each agent. I'll just paste it in exactly as it is. I guess we can start while these other ones are. But yeah, if it doesn't, it's not obvious. The fact that you can create multiple instances of Claude running at the same time is like, that in itself is amazing. And I guess any of the like Gemini CLI, Codex, or at least the local code. I don't know. Like there's a lot of, with these CLI tools, you can create multiple instances, which for me is a big deal. And honestly, like this week especially, of course, I'm doing more experimentation than normal, but I feel like I was joking with my girlfriend yesterday. I was like, hey, hold on, I need to go press enter on this thing. And I just feel like I'm just sitting there with like 5 instances open, just looking at each one like, yes.
Are we entering the era of Mr. Any Key, where you're just sitting there pressing the Any key? Maybe you can tell me. So, is there a simple way you can get Claude? Because I've been using multiple instances too, but then in the background it will spin up its own servers or local host servers, particularly. And then if you're using Python, it gets really confusing because you've got like multiple virtual Python environments going, and it's just really. Is there a way to just like get it to list out everything that it's created, so every instance that has been created running on every single local host or local endpoint, so you can see them all? Because we've been running multiple
Kind of
instances of
like
Claude
this,
Code.
kind of like how when I do / agents, it shows all the available ones. You're saying
Basically,
that, but
like,
more like a resource manager.
yeah, or almost in, I don't know, in your terminal, if it's like, all right, here are all of the local servers that are running and here are their referenced kind of terminals. I do it in Cursor all the time. I'm like, oh, it's spun up like some server and I forgot about it, you know?
There might be, but I'll show you this new this amazing tool that I've started using for that, Tom. It's called, gotta switch over. It's called Resource Manager or Monitor, Activity Monitor on Mac at least, Task Manager on Windows. Not what you were asking, but Tom, that's, unless I misunderstood your question, like I've been using this to kind of get an idea of like how many instances do I have running. Now it doesn't give you a lot of information, but yeah, that's exactly when I was saying that there's like so much to be desired at and so much opportunity at the more application level and administration, like administration dashboards and stuff like that.
I was expecting something so much cooler than Activity Monitor from you. I was just like, oh, I can't begin to describe how underwhelmed I am by that suggestion.
That was the point. All right, sorry. All right. So, all right, let's just actually start creating these. So I'll just paste in the exact markdown file that it gave me. And of course, I'm using the generate agent option, but you can actually manually create it yourself. Like if you want to, and you should, if you're doing real things, go in there and go through every line and write it out yourself. You can. You don't have to have Claude generated for you. In this case, we're doing like multiple layers of meta prompting.
Yeah, I'm just trying it out with I'm trying to push the limits over here and see what happens while you're pulling that up. I want to see what this thing comes up with, this group of content agents. So of that flow, we've got a content analyzer. And as you said, like I described my ideal, but you didn't really write it out like that. But it basically has come back pretty close to what I was describing, right? So here's the highlight clipper. It's already doing it via platform specifications. It's so much smarter than us at doing this. So like it probably is best just to throw generics at it and then optimize by the looks of it.
You know, it depends on what you're doing, but there are a lot of instances I've realized over time that the more general that you leave it, the better, because it might, or in a lot of cases, it comes up with more specifics or different ideas that like I wouldn't even thought of anyways if I wrote out a super specific prompt. And of course, yeah, there's room for both. All right. Well, I'm just kind of speeding through this, but pretty self-explanatory. You only get a couple options, and Yeah, and Tom, kind of going back to Claude Code might look intimidating to use if you're not a technical person. But I have a cool story about my girlfriend. She's listened to me talk endlessly about AI for, well, basically since ChatGPT has come out, like to a point where like it's annoying. I know that I'm annoying to her in a lot of cases, but she started picking up on some of these things that I'm talking about. And this week, she started using Claude Code and creating subagents. And she's a medical professional. So when I go to her computer, there's like 1,000 windows open and doesn't know where things are on her computer. Like I don't know where that's saved, but and she's a very smart person. I'm not trying to say she's not, but she was able to grasp these concepts like almost immediately and start actually using them.
That's so cool. It's like, this vision that I think it's the windsurf guys, but also Vercel, when I was at the Vercel conference, they were talking about this recently. It's like everyone will be a builder, right? Everyone will have these skills. Everyone will be able to utilize these tools across their professional life, their personal life. It won't look like this. It won't look like a terminal interface, but it will be deployed across everyone's abilities now.
Yep. I suppose in terms of Claude Code specifically, the limiting factor is I don't know if I'd quite say it democratizes things because you have to have a $200 a month subscription. So that's kind of a big one for like it's going to be for most people. If you're not like a developer or really excited about these things, but other than that, it's very accessible. And I don't know. At first, I didn't use Claude Code that much because it was tied to you had to pay consumption, and that was pretty scary to me. But now it's pretty much primarily what I've been using since I signed up for Max, but it's $200.
So you're manually just copying those and recreating them in here. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. But you said these. I'm just kind of blowing through it, but you said these are pretty close to what you were working on already. It'd be cool to compare them, actually.
Yeah. Well, what I was looking at is I was actually looking at some of the SaaS products that are out there that do this in the background, right? So like the one that I was looking at for the show was called Opus Clip, and there's some other ones. And then I was also doing some work on another like video generation task that's just very similar. It's basically a sequence. The thing for these creative tasks is they're very workflow centric. There's not a lot of like back and forth between agents, or it's a pretty simple structure. It's a sequence of events generally, so it's a bit more control, and also they happen asynchronously, so it's okay for the user just to say go, and then you can come and you kind of are okay with coming back 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes later and getting the result. The one where I was referencing that did it pretty well. Like this FFmpeg one, like in these ones, I'm not surprised that it can do that. Like when you're going through, it's like, all right, normalizing the loudness, all that sort of stuff's really cool. The one that I was impressed by is that highlight clipper.md one, where it actually pre-configured the formats and outputs by the social channels and a range of other things. And I was thinking, well, maybe that would have to be subagents, but it looks like it's, at least in its execution of that, it's defining it as, it can all happen within the one process flow. The other thing is like what we were talking about at the start of this conversation, they are outcome-based agents. So it's not a social media, social media content scheduler. It's a highlight clipper, a metadata generator, transcriber, like their outcomes. So it's obviously, if we're thinking about the agent architecture, you think about your outcomes within the sequence that you're trying to define, and then put those into your agents. Yeah. I'm running it on. I'm side running, and over here I'm going through like a generation flow as well to see if I can get a similar thing running, or the differences. Yeah, this is great. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, the cool thing is on this as well, like we talked about the project settings and stuff, but Tom, I can just copy this folder and you can just paste these into your whatever folder you're working out of, and then you'd be able to use them without doing anything. So
That's awesome.
All right. So at this point, you can see a full list of the agents that we have. And just to recap, what I did was Tom just briefly described what it is we're trying to accomplish with clipping this video, how we want to process it. I took like 5% of what he said and generated these agent cards. And then I took each one of those agent cards, went through the /agents creation wizard, and then I pasted those in exactly as it provided to me. And now we have each one of these sub-agents created in this agents subfolder. Okay, so that's all good. So now let's say use the sub agent team to process this clip. I just chose that one because it was the smallest. I don't even know what we're talking about here other than obviously something about GPT, but yeah, it'd be interesting. With the FFmpeg stuff, I don't know. I'm really curious how that will decide to process that.
Transcription. It's running through. That's so cool. That was so
once
fast.
Again, I don't know. We'll see. I feel like this could be another task potentially where it kind of tricks you and is like, oh yeah, totally did it. And then you look and it's like, oh, yeah, it's so much better with like Claude Desktop where it has like the collapsible sections where you can clearly see like, okay, this is a tool call, this is response. This is a mess. trying to read through all this, but
and like someone has to they have to fix this to make it a better experience, right? Like it's kind of garbage. Or
yeah, but here's the thing though. Did you know you can run the same Claude Code and Subagents as from Claude Desktop using MCP?
I think you might have demoed that to me, and it blew my mind. And then I haven't tried to do it. So I could actually be running this, and I could see it, and it would look nice and pretty. Basically, is that
I think it's going to look a little bit.
Yeah.
If we maybe I do want to show something. Maybe we'll get there, but focus on this one first. Okay.
Yeah, it's generating the files there, so it's got the audio, normalized audio on the right-hand side there.
But what I wasn't sure about is if it would create the scripts in our directory, but it's creating them or just running them at least in their own isolated.
Yeah, actually, that was the question I had. So like if the instruction of the agent is to do certain things, like in this case, run FFmpeg, does it then spin that up in a virtualized environment and then just an instance of running all these agents is just like ephemeral? Like it just sort of dies at the end of it and all that stuff gets deleted? Or is this actually stored in a project file? You know, it's got it there like .claude hooks, logged to SQLite, completed, like it's got all of the transcription. It's running this thing in the background with a terminal. And then you just get the output in the end, right?
Yeah. Even looking, okay, so it ran bash.
Yeah, so that's just a FFmpeg query, and it's getting the metadata, the format data. Where's it up to now? Bash FFmpeg, yeah, once it's got that, it then ran the actual audio extraction, and that's what generated the file, the audio WAV file, and then it normalized it. It's just
didn't even see where it set it up. Like this is the first reference.
That's sort of what I mean. Like you can't actually see like you could go to your whiz-bang terminal activity monitor and try and see. But like I actually want to see all of the local hosts, you know, where is it running? What is it doing?
Yeah. See, I didn't even realize this is where I had it in this details mode. I didn't even realize it was sitting here waiting for me to respond. And actually, I guess I didn't get it set up right because yesterday I was setting up or trying to notifications. So that would allow each instance Claude Code to notify you when it's waiting or something, and then you could manage it from more of a central like Slack. Everyone loves they have a lot of integrations with AI stuff. So you can set up notifications to Slack, and then there's also hooks.
Yeah, this is really cool. So it's running all these
set that up by yourself.
Like so a container, an external environment. It's running Python. It's installing OpenAI, the Whisper model. Yeah, it's going for it. This is amazing, man. This is so cool.
I'm curious, like, what did we actually get? So we got
Well, if you look at
transcript or audio
tasks,
clip.
yeah, if you look at the task list where it's up to, right, it's only at the first step of transcribing. If we enabled it with like, I think we'd have to enable it with like API keys and an API call or like assembly AI, your preferred thing to make it faster. But this is basically just installing OpenAI Whisper, I guess, to get through the entire thing, but it's executing it autonomously.
But this just the nature of what we're doing with FF input, like that would take a long time just running as a Python script anyways. So
yeah,
it's not necessarily
all of
with
these.
Claude. It's just a pretty resource intensive process.
Yeah, so if you open up in your terminal, I can show you the reference product. I might take these and see if I can execute it. But if you are not in your terminal, in your browser, if you open up Opus Clip, I think is the reference product that I was looking at. And they basically just say, give me a URL from anywhere. Doesn't matter where. In our case, it was YouTube, but it could be anything. And then they basically in the background do this sort of stuff. So they download it, store it on the server, then they put it through a pipeline process like this. And then in 30 to 40 minutes, they just send you an email and it just comes back with all the things that we just described, right? So many of these AI content tools are a pipeline process with these agentic flows. Now, obviously, there's a lot of orchestration on top. You got to make it production grade. But the concept is basically the same. Yeah, Opus Clip. Yeah, here it is. This is something I was considering, but in the background, that's sort of what we're paying for, right? It's pretty amazing. So you can kind of peer behind the scenes or behind the curtain. The other thing that I want to point these agents at is start and end frame video generation. So I was playing with that. Now that's a bit harder because the models aren't as good, but that's another thing that I'll point at these agent swarms at, I think, where I was playing with that. The APIs are a bit constrained. So apparently the models that are available now, I think the best one is one I was using, I think is Kling, again, from one of the Chinese labs. VO3 is the best, but they don't have that available in the API yet. It's only available in Flow for like start and end frame definition. So you like generate a dolly shot of going from the front of this property up to the front door as a seamless sequence. And then you can load in an image, but that's not API executable yet. Once it is, and that's coming next month, I'll probably be able to demo that for you. That's awesome, man.
I think that'd be super cool to kind of compare and think through. Tom, what we should have done is, and I do this type of thing a lot, should have just taken this URL for any clip, what's it called, Opus Clip, and just said make this.
Hey man, that's awesome. Do you want to wrap it up there? We're pushing 3 hours now.
Are we? Holy shit. Yeah, I don't have to go through it super in detail, but
let's check out the MCP thing. Show me that.
Well, it's even beyond. Where am I? What do you see? You see VS Code?
I can see Opus Clip still. So yeah, change your window. While you're doing all of that in the background, I've been spinning up some agents that I want to test in the real estate space, and I'm up to 35,000 tokens with no response yet. I'll let you know. I think this is why.
Tom, what I wanted to show you.
Yeah, sorry. I'll let you keep going.
You're good. I guess this isn't specifically to Subagents, but it wasn't until Subagents that I really kind of started diving into this. If you go to their documentation, you'll see a section called Development Containers. And we've talked about container sandboxes from like Daytona. I talk about Cloudflare a lot. Now, what this allows you to do is create your own containerized instances, and that would allow you to customize the container image. So, it allows even better isolation and security. Like if you're running untrusted code and things like that, that's just the nature of what a container is an isolated, safe instance, virtualized, I guess you could say. And it made me think about Cloudflare containers because I've been doing some work with Cloudflare containers. So what I ended up doing was containerizing Claude Code, and then I deployed it as a Cloudflare worker. And here you can see the documentation on that. It's actually super easy. All you have to do is clone the repository, and then when you open VS Code, if you use VS Code, it just pops up and asks you if you want to open the container. You hit yes, and that's it. But like I was saying, I deployed this as a on Cloudflare containers. And it's what made me think of this is like the concept of how we're talking about taking these agent cards, these markdown files, and being able to basically create agents on the fly, if you need it, to the point of creating temporary, like throwaway agents. I've talked a lot on the show about the evolution of long running code and cloud-based sandboxes. So it's all kind of coming together for me. And once I spun that up in the cloud and I proved it's possible, the next thing I was like, well, you need a good way to interface with it. And of course, my mind went to MCP, right? I'm a big MCP fanboy, I guess. Like, to the point, it feels silly sometimes even talking about MCP because it's what I think about a lot. So right here, I haven't spent a ton of time on this, so it could be optimized and create better use cases and things like that. But I just really wanted to see if it would work. So this is a remote hosted MCP server on Cloudflare. And then Cloudflare has this concept called bindings, which allows you to, if you have multiple different types of resources hosted on Cloudflare, they can communicate by essentially adding like an environment variable rather than a public exposed API. So in this instance, it is a Cloudflare container attached to its own Cloudflare worker. And that's like I guess, kind of like front end interface. And then I built the MCP server so that it uses Cloudflare bindings to interface with those other resources for Claude Code. Okay. So, I don't know, we'll say Claude Code Health, just the most likely one to work. And the other thing with these containers, it's kind of hard to demonstrate because they spin up and shut down. And that's the thing. I need to change the way that it initializes the container. So a lot of times it'll be like, can't get to it. It doesn't exist. But anyways, what I'm getting at here, you might have saw some of these prompts. Some of the prompts that I had set up on the MCP server, like create agent. So the idea would be kind of like I was doing with the task decomposition, where you could use like Claude Desktop or another client or Claude Code even, and just vibe here's what I need, and then it would be able to spin up subagents, just like it does on your computer, but in the cloud.
Well, that's effectively you're describing is the architecture that would have been or would be executed behind the scenes by OpenAI with their agent, right? Because you can actually see, you say, all right, use the agent and do this, and then it will take that, execute it within that environment, and then you can kind of get a window into it. You know, there's tools that you could put over the top of that, like with these containers, like that, where you can actually see, like browser use, you've got like a preview window, whatever it is. But that's effectively what you're saying. You've got like your own private kind of a way to execute kind of like an interactive agent environment that you define and you could host. So we could put it on the build and we could give people tools to run some things that are not just like a chat interface. It's like a more complicated agentic user experience. Yeah, but you've got a secure way to in and out, basically communicate with it without having to expose it to the world.
Exactly, man. And you hear a lot of people talk about agent operating systems, and that means a lot of different things to different people. But one thing that I particularly like about Cloudflare is they're clearly forward thinking. And I look at this almost like the Cloudflare environment and the resources that they provide are basically like components of an operating system, if you really think about it. So that's at least how I'm thinking about it, is like it's like a cloud-based operating system for agents.
I was going to ask you about that because we have covered other examples, right? You covered Daytona, which is a similar thing. Then there's these other component ones. There's E2B, I think, is another big player out there for containerized kind of effectively scalable compute for agents and a virtual machine. I'm like, is it just the ecosystem? Is that what you mean? Because you can plug it into everything in Cloudflare, and it's so reliable, I guess, is the other thing, because Cloudflare like runs 20% of the internet or something like that runs through Cloudflare.
Yeah, it is. Because you know how I explained bindings? I'm taking a MCP server and I'm behind the scenes, without exposing a public API, connecting those resources. Well, Cloudflare also has like vector databases. They have SQL D1 databases. They have R2 storage, which is like exactly the same as S3 storage, blob storage. Images. They even have their own browser. I don't know what you call it, like scraping tool, kind of
like Firecrawl.
some of those others that you can just
Yeah.
yeah, but like it, and I think images or browser might actually use containers on the background already, but yeah, like it does. It can save web pages as Markdown, scrape, holds directory, stuff like that. So they've built out a bunch of little components that, when combined and designed into like an ecosystem, or it is an ecosystem, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing company too. I remember I've seen some interviews with the founder of Cloudflare, just going from like basically from nothing to billion, like over $1 billion in revenue. I think they're at now. Like it's an incredible story.
Yeah, it seems like a very long-term, like a lot of vision and kind of long-term laying it out. Now, I don't know. There's probably
Yeah, actually, yeah. It
criticisms
says here
of. I just like for
this
what
year
it
they're
is. I think
expected to cross
it's amazing.
2 billion in revenue. I don't know. That's amazing to go from, but they've been going for a long time, right? They're like over 10 years old. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but in years past, the only thing I did with Cloudflare was like DNS protection and stuff like that. But they've made some massive moves lately into the AI space and agents, and I mean they have their own agents SDK actually.
Have you used it?
A little bit. I've built some like RAG agents, and I was using their SDK for more like illustrating the entire ecosystem type of stuff. But it's early on, and it's not as good as some of the others we talk about. But they just put it out recently, so
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. All right. Did you have anything else, or do you want to leave it there?
no, man, that's all. That's all. I'm gonna just see if I can actually get this to run. Like I said, this is a little bit novel concept and hacked together. I really just put this started on that yesterday. But you can see, you understand, right?
I definitely understand.
What I'm illustrating.
What I'd love to do is use that to spin up like an example interactive agent that, I could publish or use for what's going on here. As we've been talking, my agent execution in the background's been working and it's finally finished. I want to go and check this out. So
yeah, I was actually going to go back and checking on the video edit. Keep getting sidetracked, and I'm stuck on waiting for approval. I guess you can. There's an option to just fully auto allow everything, isn't there?
Not exactly in Claude Code, you mean? So you can have like auto accept.
Yeah, because it says auto accept edits on.
It's only edits, but then if there's like a setting where it has to go out and like you have to keep pressing enter. But I don't know if they've talked about it. Maybe they've gotten rid of it. There was this like /vibe command when they brought out Claude Code originally, and I think that was just like risky mode where it would just do. But I don't know if it's still in there. I should check.
Well, I know you could, because every time it asks you, and then you say allow next time or whatever, it takes note of that in your settings file. So really, I guess if you don't care, maybe that's what containers are for. That's if you want to go full YOLO mode, really should just use containers. But you could also just copy this entire file and paste it in so that these are like rules.
Yeah, nice. Okay, right. So it just adds them in there. But then it seems like all I'm doing is going back and saying accept because it's got some other new thing it needs my permission to do. I kind of wish that it had like a smart rubric of like high to low risk, and I could give it a benchmark and say for this thing, just like here's where I want you to sit and just make a decision. Yeah, so in here, like I asked Claude Code in this other example, I was like, all right, create me a comprehensive collection of real estate appraisal agents. So obviously I work in the appraisal industry or finance mortgage appraisal. That would then go off and do a lot of the tasks that an appraiser has to do manually, like sourcing data. And then there's also doing analysis, there's sorts of things, and then generating a report. It also built like a USPAP compliance agent. USPAP is like the industry kind of regulatory framework for performance standards and like accuracy and all that sort of stuff, as well as an agent within their property collect. Yeah, this is great. And then it also built the Python scripts that they referenced to do a range of the actual calculations on top, and then embedded those as tools within each of the sub-agents in the background. Yeah, this is great. This is a really amazing tool. And it's quite simple, I guess, as you were saying at the start. Like, they're just MD files, right? It's a very simple idea.
Yeah, as long if you understand how a file structure works, then you can figure this out.
Wow. All right. Awesome. Thanks, man. Maybe next week we can both do a demo of like, all right, here's something that I've actually taken from agent concept to working production. What I really want to do is see if I can get this to be like an interface. So could you use Claude Code as an interface out? Kind of like what you were describing with your virtual container, but have that power like user experience on the front end. So you've got a container and Claude is actually like the actual, like almost like kind of what LangGraph does, right? Running the execution of individual requests coming in and then pushing them out to sub-agents and then returning those. But I don't know if it's hooked up. I doubt it has anything. You'd have to hack it together. It wouldn't have all of the hooks and stuff that you need to actually power an actual web app off the top of this, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it should probably be a combination of all the like notifications, hooks. Yeah, I think you can do it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would assume we'll probably just share some of these.
Yeah. Why don't we share
and
them
that's the thing.
let's share them on the build GitHub. I'll share this one as well, and you can share that one. Where is this one up to? How many tokens?
Will.
This
I
social
don't know
media
how
manager.
useful it is. Like if you just had a big library of them and used that concept, like I was explaining, like task decomposition and embeddings and all that, I don't know, using other people's stuff might be useful, but I think there's going to be a lot of kind of user preference, very specific to whoever created these at the moment. But yeah, we'll share them. And I have actually a bunch. I actually started a repo. Like that folder I was in is already a repo. I'll just share it, and then it'll be like a mono repo of agent cards.
Yeah. Actually, I want to see. Well, yeah, like we could just share like a massive like collection. What I want to see, I actually really want to see where this one goes. So this has been running for 23 minutes, the social media one or the video analyzer. It's actually making progress through those things. This would be a lot faster if we hooked up the correct if it had all the infrastructure, because it's building the infrastructure it needs in the background to get the work done. But even then, like,
and that's the other thing too with like the containers. If it's able to detect like, hey, I have a specialized instance of this super powerful processing in the cloud, like it would just run it in the cloud, you know?
Well, like just looking at this, right? Like, so that's not an app that we built. Like an old school way of thinking, I think for us would be, all right, I define these things and the agent goes and builds, and then it builds an app. This actually is showing is like, this is the future of software in that it is real time, just in time software. It's just like, I just have a task that I need to get done. And, once the latency on this goes down and the reliability goes up of agent executions, you're like, all right, well, here's my outcome. Just go and get me my outcome. And then it spins up and develops the code in the background that it needs on the fly to get the task done, comes back, works through, and just returns the output. And then all of that code just basically dies and gets deleted. And it's just one time, which is exactly what's running here. Now, obviously you can't do it in, at 23 minutes. There's got to be storage, there's got to be memory, there's got to be learning, all those things over the top. This is amazing.
Oh, dude, the big thing I missed on like what you said right there reminded me with containers as well. You can create cron jobs.
Right. Yeah.
So, you're talking about like ambient agents. Well, you can do that. Set up your sub agents or set up that, I guess it doesn't have to be a sub agent in like a container, and it runs on a schedule.
Yeah. This is why there's going to have to be some sort of, this makes me think of, there's going to have to be some sort of like, are you a human authentication that actually works? Every single comment on social media now looks like it comes from a stack that looks like this. It's just some ambient agent that's scraping through everything. It's like, hey, it's just some simple regurgitated format that's like, hey, what you said was really interesting. I love how you said insert key topic here. And that really has an implication for insert implication here. Great job. We're like, I'm going to find stuff on the internet that's going to be real and human. All those ambient agents just running social media. Or maybe it'll just be my agent just talks to your agents.
Yeah, I know, man. So like the lines are blurred in so many ways, and even on like A2A and interagent communications and stuff. I'm thinking about like how does this come in? It's crazy. I think that's all I can say. Like it absolutely blows my mind where we are at today. Like showing this unreal.
This is great. Can you just leave this running and then send it to me? I've got to bounce, but yeah, this is great. This is really cool. There's output clips. Yeah, so it's generating the clips. There's a TikTok clip. This is awesome. That's so cool. And the fact that it did it from,
I think it did. It actually saved the Python. Now I'll go back through this, and what I'd like to do, it'd be cool, just save those scripts and you can just adjust or maybe it would probably detect it, but then next time it'd be faster because it would just have these scripts already created.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Them.
Like, so next time you can just run it, right? And this would just be like a sub process. You can just go, all right, here's the sub process. If you click on output clips, the folder where it's storing them on the left-hand side there, underneath settings, underneath the agents folder, it's actually just outputting them. How many has it done? And what else is there?
Yeah, and of course, like the stylings and shit is not going to be.
Yeah, but you can change all of that. Like that's just
how you want it, but settings. Like, dude.
Yeah. So you can do that you can set up a configuration in FFmpeg for those things. And yeah, all of that's controllable, right? That's unreal.
Yeah. And you think about it, I typed out like one sentence, right? And we got essentially, I think, like exactly what you were thinking as output.
Yeah, like obviously, like we're not going to share these as an example, but to go from a shitty prompt to that output without a failure as well. And imagine trying to do that. I guess this is to loop it back to the start of the conversation where we're saying like the purpose of this is to demarcate and manage context, but also demarcate tasks within one Claude session for a better outcome relative to the user's request. This is a clear example of that because there is no way that we would have gotten to that output from a one-shot Claude session. No way.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. Maybe we should compare just for people who aren't familiar. But yeah, like wouldn't even get close. And if you want to, were you just writing like scripts? Or are you trying to do this with an agent?
In one example I was looking at, I was trying to actually decompose the process in my mind with sequential requests into different AI products so that I could understand what the actual sequence was that I described to you at the start. That took a while, but that was sort of like me meta prompting through where the errors are to get to the sequence that would then be programmed. But actually what I was trying to get to was also a UI where I could basically predefine some of these components as well that would sit over the top of this. So that's the step that isn't covered here, which would be like, all right, I've got my clips that are pushed out, but I also want to be able to then edit those as metadata over the top, which would just then go into the JSON briefing file that would then hit the replicate API to generate the end clips. So there is a human in the loop component, which will require a UI on top. But I can imagine like converting this into an agentic app based on this information. Like this example would be relatively easy based on that.
Yeah. And I guess this is not so easy to share and use as a system. It's like only on your computer. But even for like proof of concepts, say you need to create an actual agent using a framework or something, like you can even do it with this initially and pretty easily transform it into different framework.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was trying to understand and get to around like the whole Claude Code as product. I can easily see this going from, all right, I've built out an agentic solution and then having a conversion process to take it from a development environment to an outcome to a product outcome, which would, so I'd take this and say, all right, you built all these agents. Now I want to convert this into a product with a UI on top. This is the outcome flow, and then deploy. Like you can already deploy apps on deploy artifact apps, right? I'm imagining they'll probably release some sort of hosted version of these things now that they've got this. You could say, all right, well, host an endpoint or host your app as an agentic app in Anthropic's kind of infrastructure?
Yeah, the unique thing here, well, you can still run out the API, but to use this, it's all tied to your Anthropic user account. Where if you're building agent systems on the back end, somebody typically is just like whoever made the system puts in the API key, and yeah, it's just different. It's just different. Actually, on that container thing, I had it working and I removed it on accident. When I launch it, it would prompt you. So, like Tom, if I send it to you, you initiated that MCP, it would prompt you to log into your Anthropic account, and then you would be able to use it with your subscription rather than that API.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I don't. That's just this open. It just gives me a headache, honestly, because it kind of changes everything.
Awesome. All right, mate. I've got to go, but that was a really cool demo.
Yeah, I'll let this run, and then I'll upload the. Or I guess that's just part of the. It's in the recording, so
Yeah, and let's upload the folder and share it. So like chuck it on the GitHub so we can see like the actual outputs. That'd be
I'll
cool.
just make this entire folder repo and put it on.
That'd be sick. Yeah, that'd be great.
The build GitHub. Should we show that real quick? I need to get a in jump if you need, but I'll pull that up. You know, just on YouTube, you know how people put links to their whatever it is they're trying to share? You have to have some special account. But anyways, yeah, this is the build GitHub account, github.com/the build podcast with dashes. And yeah, we'll add it as a repo and you can download it and mess with it yourself if you'd like.
Awesome. All right, mate. I got to go.
All right, Tom. Been great. We'll talk soon.
We will be going through everything ChatGPT 5, hopefully, if they don't delay it again because of open router problems.
Did you find out, was that Cypher, was that related actually GPT-5, or
they didn't confirm?
Quietly just kind of disappeared. I haven't heard anything about it since then.
Yeah, they talked about releasing an open source model, and then it looked like it was that one because some of the things they said about it matched the model profile, specifically the context window. But then they haven't mentioned it for ages, so maybe they've shelved that. Now that Meta's not going to do it, maybe they're like, "Oh, all right, screw it, we don't have to do that anymore."
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. But yeah, Tom, it's been a good one. Appreciate your time, and talk soon.
Yeah, man. Bye.